to another episode of Digital Banking Work in Progress, where we chat about the various complications of transforming banks to digital. This is where I get to chat to some of the unique personalities in banking and technology and hear their daring opinions on what it takes to go digital. And today, I have the pleasure of chatting with Richard Smith, an independent consultant who has worked with a multitude of banks as well as other enterprises on a wide range of digital projects over the last 30 years. And we are going to talk about the controversial but important topic of the common pitfalls of digital projects. Hi, Richard. Are you as excited as I am for our chat today?
Oh, definitely. But I'm starting to question how old you think I am. 30 years, honestly. I know I look older than you, but come on.
Did you start working in your teens or something?
Yeah, well, I did actually, yeah. But I say technically my technology career traces back to 1998, which I know wasn't this century, but only just in the last one, to be fair. But yeah, sorry, Sesh. I cut you off there. Apologies.
Well, that's a lot of experience in digital projects, and I think like being so intimately involved in the action as well as the decision making process of such a vast number of digital transformation projects over the years. I can only imagine the amount of tacit knowledge you must be carrying in that head of yours.
Yeah,
So, I mean, just being curious, do you have any idea approximately how many projects you've been involved in, or how many customers, perhaps, how many industries you've served?
So maybe let's go back a bit. So obviously, technology career probably started in 1998. I was doing some things before then, but as you say, I was practically a teenager. Thank you for that, by the way. Then I went independent in 2005, started my own company,
Right.
Golden Switch Limited, originally providing more engineering type services, but then evolved more into what I do now, which is literally enterprise architecture and technology consultancy services. In terms of probably very specifically, let's focus on banking and financial sector for a moment. So I counted this last night actually, 16 banks and building societies that I've helped over
How many?
years.
Sorry, how many was that?
16.
Wow.
Yeah, not 60, 16. Otherwise you can't provide enough help. Yeah. That also would cover, there's mortgage brokers in there, fintechs, bank-like startups, which is quite an interesting type of subject, I suppose. But 16 banks, and then add on to that mortgage brokers, fintechs, bank-like startups.
Wow. Okay.
In terms of some of those are just single projects, some of those are multi-projects. And I said we focused on the financial industry for a second, but I've also covered other industries, as you know, especially the audience might not. More recently, it's been more transport and retail, but also previous history in telecommunications, media, government. Just trying to think, property. Yeah, there's quite a few actually, and some of them I act as more of a, as you say, advisor or architect, and some of it's sort of like CTO advisory, that type of thing, and sometimes act as like a CTO, CIO. So really depending on what the customer actually needs, is generally where I sit and try and fill as many gaps as I possibly can. So yeah, that's me. I suppose in terms of digital, because this is what your channel's about, you could probably trace back. Digital's a weird one because people have different definitions of it. I suppose if we go for the typical definition of digital, which is more, when we started going down this journey of digital transformation to realign customer experiences to their appetites that had developed after sort of some of the commodification of mobile devices. It's probably around 2012-ish onwards. So 11 years from that point. But obviously a very long history in more of the technology facilitation, technology enhancement type projects as well.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not we call it digital, I think even before it used to be known as digital or digital transformation, it was still the kind of still within, right? We still remember some of the lessons we learned from them, and some of them are, I mean, most of them are still applicable and relevant, right?
No, 100%, yeah.
So, Richard, I mean, let's just cut to the chase, right? I'm very curious to know your view of what the common pitfalls are of digital strategies and digital projects, and what are the main things that can break a digital project?
Well, there's probably more than I'm going to even mention now, to be honest. But they all tend to be. It's never one thing. It's a multitude of things, and we'll do the first one, which everybody says: organisation. The organisation itself, whether that's the people, culture, changes within that organisation, or non-change within that organisation, and sort of the buy-in or therefore lack of buy-in. That's the typical one everybody rolls out. So I suppose moving from there, you've got the sort of the over under unaligned ambition, and that sort of, we can cover that more in a minute, because that's a whole subject in itself. But losing sight of the customer, I think it's probably another typical one, but there's many different reasons why that happens as well. Sort of the delivery patterns, and I'll probably isolate one delivery pattern overall, which is the big bang approach over maybe more of a frequent milestone delivery of points of value approach. Forgetting logistics, whether it's through ignorance, I think actually properly forgotten, or just maybe dismissing it as a thing that maybe we just deal with at the the end or further down the road. And capabilities, whether they be business capabilities or technology capabilities, or even that traditional, where do capabilities need to reside? Should they be utilities? Should the organisation own those capabilities and actually build them from scratch? And then I suppose more recently, we've seen through the cycle of COVID and all the rest of it, is that feast and famine, whereby budgets are provided and withdrawn at what seems to be quite rapid frequency, but they all seem to have a different tangent attached to that particular budget. I think really probably if I kept going, but I think that's probably a good starter, to be honest. Was that 8? I think. Yeah.
Oh, I think I counted 7.
Okay.
Maybe 8.
Maybe 8.
Yeah, maybe 8. Yeah, maybe feast is one and famine is another one.
Possibly.
It reminded me of I counted 7, so I thought of the 7 cardinal sins of digital projects.
It is 7, actually. You're right. Sorry, you actually carry it is 7. Yeah.
So as you said, Richard, I mean, some of them are very familiar and some of them are very obvious, actually. But I guess some of them are less discussed.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe let's start with something that I'm very passionate about as well, which is about the customer and losing sight of the customer. It happens all the time, but it's rarely acknowledged or discussed. And I suppose even like less often fixed. So can you kind of elaborate why and how it happens, and more importantly, how that can be avoided?
Okay, of course. So I think let's really get into grips with why does it happen. I think it was a really, really good point there. And I think the problem with organisations is they have competing requirements at any one time. And let's take the typical lever budget, for example. Now, it can be quite counterintuitive budget, because obviously if you've got a customer base, they're buying stuff off you, whatever that is, or they're banking with you or whatever, and all of a sudden you think, what, I need to cut costs, I'm going to pull the budget lever, and that maybe pulls a budget lever on your change your change programs, or even in your operational programs, which to a point, you start upsetting your customer base, and they start to leave, which then has a further impact on the whole budget lever. And I think that the budget lever is a typical losing sight of customer and the customer impacts by pulling the budget lever. I think some of it is natural lack of cohesion in organisations. So, for example, an organisation might have a roadmap of stuff that they're going to do around in the customer engagement space, and let's say that includes I'm going to chuck some things at the board. A new online banking platform, a new mobile app, a new contact center, a new type of robo advisory, those sorts of things, and maybe they combine that with some sort of operational cost-cutting measure like closing of branches. Now, if your digital programs aren't embedding themselves with the customer base at the rate they need to allow for branch closure, then the branch closure may end up overtaking the digital programs of it, or the digital programs being embedded with and accepted by customers. At which point you've effectively just alienated a whole bunch of customers who really can't interface with you anymore. Your contact center is in a position whereby they can even take phone calls. Maybe your mobile offerings aren't known or marketed enough. Maybe the customer base hasn't been able to adopt them quick enough. And I mean, what have you left the customers with? Nothing. They can't even walk into the branch. So there is a coordination problem. But I think also there's, oh God, this is going to sound quite bad. I'm never going to get any more work on this one. Is personality potential problem. So I think everybody has an idea of what good looks like, and they may be a bit bloody-minded sometimes, and I've seen quite a lot of this, where they continually push what their agenda is without necessarily reevaluating if it's the right thing for the customer, or even the most effective way of doing something for a customer. But we have to acknowledge that losing sight of the customer is quite an easy thing to do for organisations, whilst they're trying to analyse the customer requirements as such. And that feeds into what is effectively doing the art of the possible feedback up. And sometimes organisations, especially if they're running quite bloated initiatives that are quite slow moving, forget to reanalyze whether the customer base has moved on, whether they care anymore, whether they've disenfranchised customers, even down to the point of has their customer base actually changed in what they want from that organisation, and whether the pace of digital change has actually kept up with the products offering to customers and stuff like that. So it's losing sight of the customer sake, it sounds quite, how could you possibly do that? But actually, without a completely tied up agenda with the personalities removed, it is actually quite easy to actually do that.
I totally get it. I mean, when you talk about personalities, I was thinking about myself, and I myself am guilty of that. Hopefully, I've changed. Hopefully, that's behind. But I know how that can happen, because when you're so focused on building something and you have a really good idea as to what it's going to look like, it's difficult to kind of see it from a different perspective. And I think that's why it's important to have in a project planned out feedback.
Multiple faces. It's that governance part. So you blamed yourself there, especially for instances where you've managed to do that in the past, but quite frankly, it's always a team effort. It can't be just given to one CXO or one director to go and necessarily do these things. There needs to be a continuous, is this right for us? There needs to be that governance of, is this still relevant? Does it still work? Is it delivering the initiative, the value that we expect it to? And sometimes it's a case of even accepting you might have moved a bit late and now the market has moved on, or you've actually lost the opportunity in the market compared to other players. But that needs to necessarily come from other people. You need to have people who, unfortunately, sometimes are a bit overly obsessed and overly focused on the thing that has been set out to be delivered. But there needs to be a counter within the organisation to continually check if it's the right thing.
Yeah, you're right. I think from the other stuff that you said, there are several other aspects that can link to it as well, right? I mean, they're all connected.
It's all different sides of the same overly complex die. Let's face it, the seven-sided die. So what the hell would that look like? I don't know. But I mean, the personality thing. There's an ambition part of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, losing customer focus. That can come down to personality. That can come to ambition. Whether it's been, I say, overly ambitious, less so under ambitious, but let's face it, unaligned in terms of that ambition. And what is the underlying cause of the ambition unalignment problem? Is it that it's an organization ambition and actually they've completely outstepped their ability to spin up capability in the logistics? Is it just literally it was always going to be a really, really impossible ask effectively to try and drive that? And I mean, that can be dealt with by, well, you know what, let's just go through the Moscow method. There are obviously always things that we would like to reach for, those stretch targets.
Yeah.
Let's not do those at the cost of doing things we must do, for example. But then you've also got, as I say, the personality aspect. Let's face it, we all, whether it's independent consultants or other companies that come in, they want to have good portfolio, good use cases. It's the same with
Yes.
CXOs. Sometimes they want to show a good thing on their portfolio,
Yeah.
and it sometimes it can be clouded by certain perceptions of what that portfolio might look like. Is it better to have something on your portfolio which basically says, I drove a massive digital transformation that cost £300 million over 5 years that delivered brand new customer engagement? Or is it better to say, I delivered a multitude program roadmap of change over a period of time which benefited by providing this, and this?
Yeah.
And I think it's sometimes it's and we've all seen it with some of the personalities. I want to be driving a massive transformation, and I think the word transformation is the problem. And I think there's those that actually just really want to do a really good job and really bring positive, whether it's a positive attribute to the customer base or to the business or both, hopefully, that they're just really dedicated, loyal, intelligent people that really, really want to do the right thing. And I think, as I say, the problem you bring some of these personalities in. It's the word transformation. Transformation. Go on. Sorry.
I also think that, I mean, you said something really valid about what do you want to be able to say at the end of it. It's also kind of influenced by the common business idea of success and failure and the metrics, right? Success metrics.
And whoever's holding the ruler.
Used to. Yeah. But when you were talking about overambition within the context and as a separate thing as well, I was wondering. I mean, like, we are now in the age of agile methodologies and Gantt charts and swim lanes and Kanban boards, and I mean, surely that should have remedied most of these overambition versus focus kind of.
Right. There's a difference between the method and the word. So, park Kanban and Scrum and that for a moment as under the term agile. A lot of people don't see agile properly. So, what are the positive bits of agile? I mean, so forget the levers side, which is, we will control, we will keep the cost and the time period static, and we just adjust the requirements compared to maybe other types of project methodology. But ultimately, its gift is its ability to frequently deliver points of value.
Yes.
Now, that's an ability of it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's always used that way, or that it's understood to be that. So a lot of people think, oh, agile is a great way of not having to have upfront requirements and discover it as you go along. No, that's terrible for any project. It's a complete waste of money in any organization. That it's an ability to basically just very, very quickly pivot. Well, you can, but you need to pivot in a way whereby hopefully you've been able to manage some of your points of value, and that your points of value continue to be relevant. That you have and this is a positive of what I'm going to say of agile, which is you have a good loop of requirement and art of possible. which is a positive attribute again. But some of that needs to be worked up front. Otherwise, you end up going down different directions in platforming that you maybe shouldn't have done. And there are times where Agile isn't the right tool, but quite frankly, it's not normally a digital initiative. I'm building HS2, which is a high-speed rail link in the UK. It's a big piece of infrastructure. It needs a lot of upfront thought, and it needs to be, obviously rolled out over a 30-year period. That's not an Agile project.
Yes.
Maybe some of the realizations of what you can do with the capability afterwards would come through Agile, but not the actual infrastructure platform itself. So I think this is the problem. Like the word transformation, the word Agile, and even the latest one that's been spun up, Gen AI.
Yeah.
Because they're quite close to other English words, and weirdly that mean nothing close to that near English word. I mean, Agile doesn't necessarily give you license for agility. It requires more than Agile. Transformation is not something that you are doing. It's literally something that's happened to the market, and something you're trying to effectively either take advantage of, or you're going to be subject to losing out on. And Gen AI is nothing to do with the generation AI. It's literally generative. It's a particular type of AI. And it's just, as I often find when I go into organizations, it's consistent terminology, not only just with market, but across the organization as well.
Yeah. Now, on a completely different kind of, side of the story or side of the coin, I like to quiz you a little bit about logistics. I mean, it sounds so trivial, and yet ambition and customer and buy-in and all of that. Why is that? Why is logistics still a problem?
So, and it's literally it's mindsets. So, a digital initiative is more than strategy. It's more than writing down on a piece of paper what you think you're going to be doing. It's the realization of it, and that's to a point even outside of your typical leadership. It's what capabilities do you have to be able to go and drive your digital initiative over a period of time to gain the points of value that you are expecting to have. So, one way of dealing with logistics we found with organisations is to hand it over to a third party. SI, here you go, complete. You could completely do this. And generally, what happens is after a long period of time, what's delivered isn't what the customer wanted. From a top level, things have been changed over time. The requirements were never that clear. What ends up getting delivered was actually just what was in the contract, signed but poorly understood.
Yes.
I say in terms of the internal logistics, it's not just landing stuff; it's the embedding of stuff. So we all understand that the need to go and discover requirements, the need to go and define what we want, the need to go and actually design what that looks like, and then go and deploy it. How's it going to land in the customer base? Have you actually appropriately engaged customers? Have you appropriately tested all the scenarios? Is this going to be something that, in terms of logistics, is going to require a massive amount of resource from the organisation, and maybe resource that can't adequately be found? And is this going to really start blowing budgets? So it's just one of those sort of typical terms whereby strategy help. It's not strategy that wins wars; it's logistics, and having the right things at the right time, orchestrated in the right way, effectively, help you deliver your win. And there are things that people can do to set themselves up well for the logistical challenge, and for example, orchestrating the order of things correctly and making sure that the dependencies delivered by different digital initiatives are known, are lined up, and are actually expected to be delivered. That you have a level of budget certainty for those dependencies, which they would do effectively at that point. You don't end up with a project that ends up being cancelled that was expected to deliver X, Y, and Z for another project. And it's that that sort of landing thing in terms of the business capabilities, especially, do they exist? Are they at the right maturity? Are they going to be able to absorb this? Is there other things that need to happen as part of that digital initiative, which really allows this to land and allows it to land well? And that might be things happening before the digital initiative is even finished delivering. It's actually in parallel to that delivery.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you frame it that way, your phrase was just right, that logistics strategy doesn't. What did you say? Strategy doesn't win wars.
Yeah, logistics. Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful, because when you often say logistics, often we think of infrastructure and resources. But
it's the same thing to a point. So
it is, but
combined with orchestration.
Yes, it's a very limited kind of way of thinking about infrastructure, which, thanks for that. That was powerful.
You know what? That's not either. So the limited thought of infrastructure, it happens in digital initiatives weirdly quite more often than not. Because one thing's, I think your company says this more than anybody else. You build on the shoulder of giants.
Yes.
which is effectively it's platforms from the past, isn't it? And I remember building some of those. Yeah. But to show the age. But yeah, I mean, in terms of digital initiatives, I mean, one of the things that keep coming up is putting lipstick on a pig.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not that far different. It's actually far better than that in terms of an outcome. Yeah. But quite frankly, if putting a lipstick on a pig sells a pig, is there a problem with that? No. If it doesn't, then that's the problem. It's alignment.
Yeah, got it. So, Richard, even though you had the 7 cardinal sins of digital projects, I think we covered most of them in some form. But I don't think I don't think this episode does justice to, really covering each aspect and going into detail of each. But I think we've discussed quite a few of the less known, less discussed, less acknowledged problems and issues. So that's a win for us. Now, before we conclude, I want to have my usual quickfire segment where I will tell you a word and ask you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay. I fear for my ability to market my services moving forward. Go for it.
Well, you can't think that way. You have to be honest.
Okay. Can we edit this afterwards?
I'll try and ask some, less controversial.
No, you go for it.
Okay, so the first one is something that is very close to me: open banking.
Okay. To be fair, it's a missed opportunity, largely due to regulatory interference.
I don't disagree. Second one, technology budgets.
Poison chalice.
Okay. The third one, something you mentioned actually, generative AI.
Not the answer to everything we think it's going to be.
Okay. Last one, socks.
I'm a size 14, which is a 15 in the US, and I think it's like a size 50 in the EU. Are we talking compliance? I don't know.
Thanks for the tip. You know what you're getting for Christmas then.
Oh, so what everybody else buys. Luckily, I get through them quite a lot, so that works. Can I get orange ones?
I can. Orange is our preferred color.
Works for me.
All right, Richard. Thanks so much for this conversation. I always learn something from you every time I chat with you.
Thanks for the invite.
7 things.
Thank you for the invite of appearing. I can't believe your channel doesn't have 10,000 subscribers, to be honest. All your content's very professionally presented. It's quite engaging.
Thanks, Richard, for all the different things that we spoke about today. Every time I meet you, I learn something new. And today, I think I learned 7 new things. Thanks for the various insights. I don't think we had enough time to do justice to each topic. Okay. So let's see how we can fix that in the future. But thanks again for all the insights. And I hope that what you shared with us today will help some of our viewers prevent them from falling into those pitfalls in their next project. So thanks again. And thanks to everyone watching, and hope to see you in a future episode.